welcome to Lambeau Field. I'm Robert Zizzo. I'm next to Ryan Wood, and we're here to talk about the Packers' comeback victory. One for the record books. Amazing 20-point deficit that they faced. They had an injured quarterback. You heard Aaron Rodgers talk in the postgame about what it meant to him. I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, there was just to kind of put some contrast to the conflicting emotions of the night. There was a time in the press box that it felt like Minnesota 2017 all over again. I mean, Aaron Rodgers goes down with it's a left knee injury,
right?
And you don't know how bad it is, only that he can barely walk and he's being carted to the locker room. If he doesn't come back out of that locker room, not just tonight, but for a very extended period of time, which was on the table, that's the season. I mean, that's their season. So it went from that to this incredible victory that, I've only seen this one other time. And I actually thought about this midway through the game. 2011, I was covering Northern Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Mid-American Conference Championship game. They were the favorites, but they fell behind at 20-0 at halftime to Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And they came back and won that game. And I actually thought, I've seen 20-0. I mean, that's how they fell behind tonight. They fell behind 20-0. I've seen that. That's on the fringe of what's really possible in a half.
Mm-hmm.
The difference, obviously, this is NFL. This is Khalil Mack on the other side. This is not college kids, grown men, and a comeback like that. They'll be talking about that performance from Aaron Rodgers for a very long time.
I mean, what does it mean for the Packers if they lose this game to a home game against a division opponent that's not supposed to make much noise, and you come out of it with a gimpy quarterback? I mean, is that the season? I mean, it's game one. Let's put it,
No, it's not. It's not the season, but the conversation, the narrative coming out of tonight would be, are the Packers actually the third best team in the NFC North?
Right.
Because Minnesota's Minnesota. They're going to be a force to deal with in this division and in the conference.
Right.
They beat a pretty good San Francisco team today. They look pretty good doing it. And then to get beat, not just lose, but as soundly as it was in the first half, 17-0 at halftime, 20-0 in the third quarter, to get beat like that to Khalil Mack and the Bears, the narrative would have been, well, they're the third best team in the NFC North,
right.
and boy, it's really gotten away from. So I mean, you need to win all 16. I mean, every week really is a must-win because there's only 16 games, but this was a really important one, even for an opener.
So we're having a lot of questions here about whether Aaron Rodgers is going to play next week. In the post-game news conference, he said he is, although our Pete Doherty asked him several times to try to put it in context, and he talked a lot about how they don't know. So, what does that mean?
Well, he told Michelle Tafoya he was going to on NBC after, and then he backtracked a little bit, ever so slightly, when he was talking to the rest of us reporters from the podium. He said he's going to try to. That's the plan. He plans to play.
Right.
So, look, I mean, I didn't think he was coming back tonight. Not only did he come back, but he Willis Reed this thing.
Right.
I don't.
For those of you who don't know who Willis Reed is, New York Knicks center, late 60s, early 70s, came limping back from the locker room. Was it the NBA
Game
championship?
7, NBA 7. So I mean, look it up because that's what Aaron Rodgers just did, except this was a season opener.
Exactly.
It was not Game 7 of a championship series. But that's what Aaron Rodgers just did. I mean, that's why tonight is going to be discussed and talked about for long after Aaron Rodgers retires, because this was one of the more memorable nights, and he's had some very memorable moments in this series, this rivalry, especially the NFC Championship game, getting to the Super Bowl against the Bears.
Right.
2013, fourth down, the bomb to Randall Cobb against the Bears.
Same guy, right?
But this is, and even Rodgers said after the game, this is as special to him as any other moment, just because. And what was really interesting was talking with Mercedes Lewis after the game. Mm-hmm. He's played a lot of football. He's seen as much football, maybe even more than anybody else in that Packers locker room. But it's all been in Jacksonville, which is not Green Bay, because Aaron Rodgers is in Green Bay and not in Jacksonville. And he was the perfect person to underscore what this meant. I mean, around here, you see stuff like this enough that you can kind of get used to it. Mercedes Lewis is not used to it. And he kind of bluntly said, look, in this league, you don't come back from 20-0. It does not happen. You fall behind 20-0 in this league against professional teams, that's the game. Mm-hmm. Except the one exception, really, and that's really maybe two. I mean, you got Tom Brady and the Patriots that can come back from 28-3 in the Super Bowl, and you've got Aaron Rodgers that can come back 20-0 when nothing is going right, everything's going wrong, and still somehow find a way to win.
And then you've got Randall Cobb, who some people were saying should have been cut. He's done. He's too old. He costs too much. And did he just tell everybody they were wrong? Well,
that was a heck of a savvy run. I mean,
Yeah.
the way he finished it after sprinting toward the end zone 75 yards to cut back inside and use the block, that's what he does.
Just
he's got
avoid
that field
Khalil
vision.
Mack.
And you know what? The Packers put Randall Cobb when nothing was going right and they were searching for something. They put him back to return a punt. He got a 17-yard punt return.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a spark plug. His toughness is one thing, and that's something that the Packers have always admired. But he can give you a little bit of energy when you need that. He showed it on the touchdown, showed it on the punt return. I wrote about this tonight. Devontae Adams is Devontae Adams. Had a good night. Randall Cobb had a good night. Geronimo Allison's emergence is really important because if they can,
heck of a catch,
a heck of a throw, heck of a catch, beat Kyle Fuller on it. If they can actually get production from three receivers, if they can really go three deep, and you're expecting going forward, it takes some time, and we've written about this in the offseason, it takes some time to get their tight ends up to speed. This is Jimmy Graham's the third straight time that they've had a new lead tight end, third straight year. It's going to take some time. You'd expect more production from Jimmy Graham as you go forward, but if you're able to actually go three deep in production at receiver, it allows Aaron Rodgers to pick his matchup. And that's really, I mean, when he went to Geronimo Allison 3 times in a row at the end of the third quarter, that really kind of, I think it sparked what we saw in the fourth quarter. It kind of put it into hyperdrive, the comeback, because he found a matchup he liked and that he could go to, and we saw that again on the touchdown.
So Jim Ozarski, our newest reporter, had a great stat.
He did.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So basically, the Packers defense, they started the night 10 plays, 86 yards, touchdown. I mean, it looked like Dom Capers. It looked like everything that we've seen from the Dom Capers defense.
I saw some hashtag hire Capers.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Twitter.
change the fire to hire. It looked like the same thing. But the thing to keep in mind, and in hindsight, it really spells out. That was when the Bears were on their script, and Clay Matthews talked about how there was a lot of unscouted looks, especially they really varied their protections. They did some college-style protections that they just hadn't seen. Once they got off the script, once they got past those first 15 plays, the Packers defense gave up very little. And really, rightfully so, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers tonight, but the Packers don't win that game without their defense. It kept them in the game. Remember, 7 of those points came from Khalil Mack. When Aaron Rodgers was out of the game, Deshaun Kizer just threw him the football like he was an intended receiver. They don't win if the Packers don't recover from that 10-play, 86-yard touchdown drive and get some 3-and-outs, some field goals. And really, what they gave up after the Bears got off their script was almost identical in yardage.
I think it was the first 15 plays, they got 140 yards. Their next 51 plays or so, 150 yards.
or something, yeah.
So how much of that is the Packers' defense, and how much of that is the Bears just not being that cohesive on offense at this point?
I think that time will really tell on that. Let's not forget, last year in the opener, the Packers really dominated Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, and we were all thinking, well, that's it. This defense has turned a corner. It's a new day, and it really wasn't. So some of those answers will come, but this was a gut check time. Like Clay Matthews talked about, after Khalil Mack, takes it the 27 yards to the end zone, which, by the way, what a heck of a running back you'd make.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's holding the ball in one
hand. It was
hand.
like shades of Julius Peppers against the Minnesota Vikings in 2014. Like, that's the last time I've seen kind of a play like that. But once that happened, this 17-0, and it could have been very deflating for the defense because they had, to that point, it was 56 seconds ago in the first half, they had stymied the Avalanche, so to speak. I mean, it was 10-0. They'd kept them in the game, and boom, 17-0. You're going into halftime instead of 10-0. That's a huge difference. At that point, Clay Matthews said the defense knew they couldn't give up anymore. It was really a gut check, and they came through with that. So it is something to build on. You got to do it a lot more often than one game to really show that this is a new defense. But it is absolutely something to build on, and I think it's going to be maybe a precursor to a new day for them.
So you talked to Matthews after the game.
Yeah.
What did he say about the penalty, the roughing the passer penalty? I mean, that could have cost them the game. The Bears still had 2 timeouts at that point.
Yeah.
They were 20 yards away from field goal range. So what was his...
He was kicking himself.
Yeah.
He was. He understood that. He said as soon as he hit the quarterback, he was kind of expecting a flag. Now, it does underscore the new reality for edge rushers in this league. You almost can't touch the quarterback. You can, because Nick Perry did, and ended the game with a sack. And the best thing Nick Perry did was that he didn't land on Mitch Trubisky. Because if you do, as you see, if you've watched any other football other than tonight, you get a penalty. You can't land on the quarterback now, or it's 15 yards. So Nick Perry did a heck of a job not landing, and that's what, obviously Clay Matthews, it was a late hit.
It was late. It was definitely late. He did not have to do that.
It's a tough... I can see from his perspective how it's difficult because it's 4th down, potentially the game in the balance.
And he really hasn't gotten near the quarterback.
Hasn't gotten near the quarterback at all. So he wants to make a play. And again, I mean, that could be the deciding play. It's really tough to hold up and to pull up then, but you have to. And Clay Matthews knew that. And he said that he thought a year ago there's a chance that he might have gotten away with just a warning. There wouldn't be a flag. But he knows that with the way that the game is being called this season and going forward, that's going to be called every time. That's the new reality. There's going to be a flag. As soon as you hit the quarterback, he said he expected to see yellow on the ground.
So we're getting a lot of questions about Aaron Rodgers' injury. There's no official word. He said in the postgame that it's still swollen. They're going to look at it tomorrow. He'll know more Wednesday. It is in the knee that was surgically repaired a couple of years ago. So... That may or may not be good or bad news for him.
And he's torn the ACL on that left knee before. Now, they avoided that, and there was a time, and Aaron Rodgers said it's the reason why they got the medical test, to make sure that it wasn't torn. I mean, there was a time when I think when we look back 2 months from now, we'll look at this night and realize just how close this night became to being the end of their season.
Right.
I mean, they got lucky that they avoided the worst there.
So who among the newcomers, whether by draft or trade or pickup, impressed you the most tonight? Stood out the most?
I think that you could count Geronimo Allison in that just because it's a completely new role that he's in. Mm-hmm. He had a big night, and we already talked about what that'll mean. I think that some of the other guys, there's more to be seen there. Muhammad Wilkerson.
And I didn't think his was worthy of a penalty. He tried to hold back.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't envy these defensive players. No. And I understand why the NFL is doing it, because this is a business, first and foremost, and the biggest investment's the quarterback, so you have to do it. But I don't envy these defensive players. It's tough.
What about the secondary? Anything jump out at you there?
I think it's going to be real interesting to see how the rookies develop, because it was pretty clear tonight that they're kind of mixing and matching a lot with the 2 rookies. It started out that Josh Jackson was the nickel and Jair Alexander was the dime. But even in the first series, they kind of switched that, and Jair Alexander ended up being the nickel late. And I think you're going to see a lot of that variety until one of them seizes it, or if they both really develop at a pace that they like, maybe a Tramon Williams can because we made the point in the pregame. Tramon Williams is 35. You can't play him 95% of the snaps this season. So they need to really have 4 cornerbacks that they can play, and you saw that tonight. Both rookies. We'll see what the snap counts are after, but they both got regular playing time, and I think you'll continue to see that.
J.K. Scott, the MVP of the first half.
Yeah, boy,
kept him in the game.
Maybe it was a good thing that they drafted a punter in the 5th round. No, it's. That certainly it helps the defense. We talked about how good, but the fact that he was giving up 0 returns on his punts and
a really dangerous returner.
Not giving the Bears any opportunity to spark any more momentum and build off what they had done early in the game. It set up the defense for success, and I think it certainly helps.
I saw you talking to some of the offensive linemen in the locker room. What did they say about Khalil Mack and trying to keep him off of Rodgers? And obviously they didn't get a lot of help. There's no fullback on the roster. Mercedes Lewis is the only blocking tight end. What were they talking about?
Well, Lane Taylor kind of put it perfectly. He said that was sick. as far as what Aaron Rodgers did. I mean, that was kind of the perfect. It was pretty sick. But yeah, he said, Lane Taylor said that they kind of gifted Khalil Mack a few of those. Look, this offensive line did not play together the entirety of the offensive line all preseason, not once, and you could obviously tell. I mean, they blowing some assignments you don't usually see. The play that Rodgers got hurt on was the play. They kind of blew a stunt and had a kind of a free rusher. There was a couple times when Khalil Mack came free. It was a tough matchup for Brian Bulaga. At this stage, I don't think there's a single right tackle in the league that can block Khalil Mack one-on-one, and Brian Bulaga is one of those, obviously. The real tough night was for Justin McCray, which, fortunately for him, he was able to come out of here with a win. But early on, he had his hands full with Akeem Hicks, gave up a strip sack, was called for 2 holdings. Almost looked better as a right tackle last year than he did at right guard. So I wouldn't expect that to continue. This Bears front is really good, and you saw that tonight. But I think the question going forward that needs to be asked was how much of the offensive line struggles was not having any time to play together this preseason and running right into Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks right off the bat, or is this something that's going to be persistent because they don't have depth. They really need their front five, their starting five to be good.
So, review on Mike Pettine's first game, Packers DC.
Defense came through, and frankly, late in the game, there were times when they got some pressure. Now, not early. They certainly didn't get much pressure early, but late in the game, they did get pressure. There was some times that they kind of got caught with some soft zones, but no real blown assignments.
Right.
And that's obviously, if you've watched the Packers defense.
They only had one instance where somebody was rushing to get off the field, which was pretty commonplace last year.
Yeah, it happened quite regularly. So, the 2 words to me that stand out for the defense tonight was it was gut check time. And, they got to the point where they just couldn't give anything else up, and they didn't. And so when talking with Aaron Rodgers after the game, I asked him, obviously this defense has gotten a bad rap over the time. How meaningful were they in this comeback? And he said, they have gotten a bad rap, but tonight they don't win. They don't win this game without the defense. That's big.
He kind of ripped him a little bit too when he said, reference give up a pick, or drop a pick, give up a touchdown. He said that usually happens to us.
Speaking of dropping a pick, Kyle Fuller.
Yeah, right.
He dropped the win. He dropped the win.
So
tough night for the Bears.
The safeties, Bryce. How do you do?
I got to go back
tackles.
and see the film. I nothing really. I'll tell you that from a safety perspective, the play of the night was Ha Clinton Dix, the open field tackle on 3rd and 1 against Sims.
Yep,
that was huge. Heck of a tackle. I mean, he's going against a bigger bodied guy, and you can't budge there, and he didn't. So not just the open field tackle, but the power to keep him where he was and stop him cold. That was really impressive.
And Deshaun Kizer.
There were at the very start.
Is it Brett Hundley again?
At the very start, I thought he did some things that were better than Brett Hundley. He was able to get the ball out on time, and I think he had a more encompassed view of the field. There were times when he wouldn't go with his first read. He'd double back to, if he started right, he'd go left. There were some promising things, and then frankly the offensive line crumbled in front of him, and he handled it very poorly, very poorly. Because when from a quarterback's perspective, when the offensive line falls apart, you can't make things worse, and he did, and that was the issue tonight. Khalil Mack taking the football from him, and then catching the football from him. Really, Khalil Mack being Khalil Mack. It was a really tough thing to be thrown in there for, but I actually did think that early on, they moved the ball a little bit, and you can't fumble the ball, you can't let an edge rusher take the ball from you, and that's what's going to be remembered tonight. But there were some positives too. They got overshadowed by the negatives.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up this Facebook Live session. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks to all of you for chiming in, and go to PackersNews.com for all the coverage from tonight's game from all of our reporters and videos. Thanks a lot. Good night.